Good morning. My name is DonnaRae Menard, and I'm a local author. And with the courtesy of Joshua Pryor and Northwest Public Access TV, I'm going to be reading you segments of my novel, Beneath the Fountain. It's a story that happens in St. Albans, Vermont, in Taylor Park at the Goddess Fountain, and it all starts when a body is found in the fountain. Now, Lynn Steves and her partner in crime, Shannon Patnode, are sneaking around behind the back of the local sheriff, trying to figure out exactly what happened, not because they're so intent on solving the crime, but the fact that they would like the gentleman that died to have closure. So we're going to continue with where we dropped off the other day. We walked down the sidewalk right past the guys working on the fountain and crossed the street to the alley. About 20 feet in was the bottom of the staircase to the second floor porch. She went up, I followed. Shannon walked along the porch like she had every right to be there. I was more hesitant. It was broad daylight. Anyone who looked up could see us. Fortunately, most of Main Street wasn't awake yet. "Wait here," Shannon said. I stood between a window and a door to the back apartment. She kept going. Because she squatted down while she messed with the doorknob, I was sure that no one could see her from the street. "What are you doing?" I hissed. It seemed like forever before she stood up and waved for me to join her. Then Shannon disappeared inside. I didn't hesitate but hustled to catch up. Once I was through the door, she pushed it closed. She was wearing blue plastic gloves liberated from the hospital and handed me a pair. "How did you do that?" I said, nodding towards the door. "Lockpicks," she said, stuffing the leather pouch back into her pocket. There was a severely disgusting, rotten smell in the apartment. I covered my nose and mouth with my hand. Shannon adjusted her mauve-colored accent scarf. The entire apartment consisted of a bedroom, three-quarter bath, and a single room that served for everything else. On the interior wall was a tiny kitchenette. In front of the ratty couch was a 6x10 accent rug with a huge, dark stain. Someone had cut out sections of the rug within the stained area. The buzzing flies were making me nervous. "You're right about this being a murder scene," I said. Then I heard the click of Shannon's camera, followed by several quick clicks. "Don't touch anything," I ordered Shannon. While she clicked away, I walked into the bedroom. The only furniture was a bed. The mattress was covered with a cotton spread, no sheets or pillows. The closet was empty. The living room had only the couch, the rocker, and a table with the TV. And then, of course, the rug. "I don't think anyone ever really lived here," I said. "Yeah," Shannon agreed. "There are only a few dishes, one fry pan, and some rotting fast food in the refrigerator." A siren raced up Main Street. "Out of here!" I cried. Shannon sprinted to the door. On the street level, we split up. She went back to her truck, and I headed toward the lower corner and home. A cup of coffee, some food, and maybe the small headache in my right temple would dissipate before I got to work. Seated back in my chair, I could see the door we had just exited. I didn't need the binoculars, but I wanted to check closer. I had wiped the knob off on both sides with my sleeve. Hopefully, that was adequate. Then I allowed my eyes to travel up Newton Street. I could see just past the second block in the direction of the burnout. So close. I sat with my head in my hands, eyes closed, considering the information my senses had collected. I thought about laying on the ground while I was there, and I imagined myself in a fancy dress. What else? Surprise, cold, falling, falling, falling. Was that just my imagination running amok? My sketch pad was leaning on the side of the chair. I used it to make notes. If I had been Hank camping out in that apartment, I wouldn't have cared about the lack of amenities. It was safe, warm, convenient. Yet there was something there that repulsed me, or maybe it was recoiling fear. Yet there was something out of the blue. I felt surprise and the same falling, falling, falling. What was with that? It's not like I'm psychic. Like anybody else, I occasionally get those half-a-second bursts of déjà vu, but that's it. Overactive imagination, I said to Rusty. I made us a tuna sandwich and packed some leftover pizza for supper. My stomach didn't want to go back into the sandwich shop quite yet. Clyde, Carly, and Ted were all working when I arrived, but summer was in the air, and someplace a golf course was calling to Clyde. Before you go, I said, I'd like to suggest we consider some idea regarding the employees surrendering their cell phones when they clock in. Maybe a rack next to the time clock or something. Are you serious? He asked. I think it's a bigger problem than you realize. He laughed and walked away. What the employees were doing with their phones wasn't his major concern at that moment. During the summer, Clyde always hires 2 muscular guys to work part-time and help with the unloading and loading of supplies, loading customers' vehicles, stuff like that. This year's guys had started at the end of April and had worked the previous season, so they were good with what the job entailed. The new seasonal clerk, however, was a different story. I was pretty apprehensive about the fact that this was her first morning and Carly was training her. They were about the same age. There would be bonding, which meant when I had to correct the bad habits Carly had instilled in the newest employee, the girl would go back to Carly, who would in turn run to Clyde. My headache was reappearing. The muscle guys and Ivy, the new girl, left at 3. An hour later, Shannon was in the office doorway. Go away, Shannon, I said, and don't let Carly see you. She's going to tell Clyde I'm entertaining on the clock. Oh, don't worry, she's good, laughed Shannon. I brought her a shake and everyone else iced coffee. They aren't going to give a fat rat patooties that I'm here. She plopped down in the extra office chair after moving it so it wasn't exactly in the direct line of sight if someone opened the door. Obviously, she had listened a little bit and was trying to keep me on the job. I was working on the mismatch of Clyde's notes, trying to decipher his handwriting and his shorthand. He knew what he meant, but I had no clue. I was frowning at a particularly garbled bit written on the side of a receipt tape when I realized Shannon was talking. What? I asked. I said, her voice was hushed, my friend in legal sent me out a folder via courier. It's information he compiled about Valina. I read the note he attached with it, but not the other pages. I thought maybe you should look at it first because you told Tori you would try to find out what happened to her friend. I stopped squinting at the online order form and stared at Shannon. And? I asked. There's no and, said Shannon. I'm just trying to help you out about Mr. Knapp. I still think these cases might be intertwined, but not 100%. She put a slim blue file on the table. I was disappointed. With all that was going on, I thought the file should be at least 3 inches thick. Carly walked past the window of the door on her way to the time clock. That was my clue to check out what was happening out front. My tote was on the floor next to my feet. I slid the file into it next to the sketch pad. Call me, said Shannon, slipping out the door. I had planned to tell her about my feelings from earlier in the morning, but the blue file distracted me. I locked the office door and went to check on the guys. How far did Carly get on the straightening up? I asked when I walked out. Eric gave me a shrug for an answer, so I went to check her work. I was keeping a note of her daily working habits in the event she cost me my job, and I had to defend myself with employment security. In the hammer and saw aisle, I found an empty strawberry shake cup and the lingering odor of something acrid, like maybe a single pull from a joint. I looked, but I didn't find any residue. Back at the cash registers, the guys were doing fine. Are you still working on the supply order? Eric asked. At my nod, he added, are we going to get any more potted plants? No, I said. I had to order them a year in advance. Order more fly tapes, Ted called out as I headed back to the office. It wasn't easy to force myself to ignore the blue file and keep plugging away at the stock order. My sigh of pleasure at the completion of that task disappeared when I realized it was time for Eric to go to supper. Then it would be me, then Ted would leave, and I would be out front for the rest of the evening with Eric. I wanted to scream in frustration. Somehow the gods of the cosmos were feeling benevolent toward me, and I got to spend my supper break locked in the office reading through the blue file. Then glory of glories. Business through the evening was so slow I could say to Eric, I'll be in the office catching up. Ring me if you need me, okay? Eric is my number one guy. Even though he's barely 22 years old, His head is solid on his shoulders and his feet are firmly planted on the ground. If I ever had a son, I would want Eric. Swallowing the last slurp from the watered-down iced coffee, I opened the file again. The first page was a personal message addressed to Shannon from the guy at the legal office. It was clear that they were good friends. He expressed his sorrow at her loss of Alina and hoped the information he had collected would calm Shannon's fears that everything had been on the up and up. The guy signed with his first name only, but the letterhead let me know that he was a partner with the firm long enough so that his last name would appear in the title. Wow, Shannon, I said, you do know people. The next page contained the request for all pertinent information regarding the transfer and passing of Valina Bedford. Paperclipped to the inside front cover was a letter to Shannon's friend stating Ms. Bedford's attorney, Brad Hogue, had secured a bed for Miss Bedford because he believed her needs were not being met at her previous residence and that her health was in jeopardy. She had arrived on the 4th day of the month and passed away on the 14th day of that same month. There was an added note that Ms. Bedford was in distress health-wise when she arrived. Under the paperclip was a second set of papers from the nursing facility at the hospital here. Among their correspondence was a statement that Mr. Hogue requested the move, so Ms. Bedford would be close enough to be visited daily by an unnamed relative living in the Vergennes area. Mr. Hogue elected to move her by private vehicle. Ms. Bedford had left St. Albans on the first day of the month. Both sets of paperwork included a copy of a form signed and certified by both the attorney and a judge affiliated with the Burlington, Vermont court system. There was a sticky note from Shannon's friend that said, as ward of the state, any change to Miss Bedford's arrangements required legal notification. But he had added that it was usually merely a nod to legalities, and especially when the requested judge was someone as busy as Judge Costello. The next paperclip held a bundle of pages from a computer-based Find Your Friend organization. It contained personal information about Ms. Bedford's life, where she was born, went to school, her education, where she worked. In the family column, 2 sisters were listed, both predeceased Ms. Bedford. One sister's surname was Hogue. The last piece of information was in a sealed envelope that had information regarding fraud investigation, secure documents, written in black marker on the outside. These very factual pages pertain to the Federal Bureau of Investigation having been alerted about a theft of funds, and the pages provided the same information Tori had given me. Tori's name was never mentioned, but her bank was, and the closing said this was an ongoing investigation. How ongoing, I mused. How come no one realized the nephew at the bank and the attorney in Vergennes had the same name and the same surname as the sister? The buzzer went off. I was needed up front. I called Shannon and left a quick message. My house at 8:05. I had questions. Chapter 17. The blue file fell from my hand to the coffee table in front of Shannon. Neither she nor Rusty, who was watching my friend chow down a Bavarian cream donut, paid any attention. You said you hadn't read this, I said. Correct, said Shannon. She opened her mouth to say more, but I waved her aside. Read it, Shannon. It's bad. Valina left St. Albans on the 1st. She was well enough to travel by private car. She didn't arrive in Vergennes until the 4th, and then in poor health. Where was she for 3 days? Did Brad Hogue, the lawyer, deliver her, or did she arrive in a taxi or an ambulance? Did Brad Hogue, the nephew, visit her every day like he said he was going to? Is his mother her sister? How do we figure this out? Shannon's mouth opened. I wasn't done talking yet. The FBI report says ongoing investigation. What does that mean? Are they still searching out leads? Do you have a friend in the FBI? No, she said. And worst of all, I dropped into my window chair, this has nothing to do with Mr. Knapp. Okay, so it's 2 different things, Shannon said. 3, if you count the Scarlet Lady. Shannon leaned back in the love seat. I was never big on listening to the news or reading the papers. I'd rather watch cartoons. Since Mr. Knapp's murder, that had changed. I was listening to the local news at 9 in the morning and again at 9 at night. I have heard nothing new about Mr. Knapp since they found the apartment, and nothing about the lady in the scarlet dress, I pointed out to Shannon. I know, she said sadly. The bigger papers aren't carrying the story because juicier news is happening elsewhere. I've been checking with the police department daily. They've got nada. How is it in this day and time no one has stepped forward about the lady in the scarlet dress? I was up again and pacing. You know, Lynn, Shannon began, Teresa and I think maybe you should, remove yourself from this. I spun around. She was the one that had prodded me into this. Alone, I might have eventually moved on. What? Yeah, you seem to be getting kind of, nuts. Shannon was sitting on the couch next to my 23-pound cat, and I swear to God, she was shrinking smaller than he was. You know, I said with a sigh that once expelled caused my shoulders to round. Maybe you're right. I am? Shannon sat up in amazement. Yeah, I got caught up because I knew Mr. Knapp, more or less. Then Tori had a sob story I got sucked in by. I was back at the window. The dead lady? She's been there a while. Anyone could have stumbled on her. I looked across the street, specifically not towards the fountain end of the park. Tomorrow I'm going to tell Tori that Valina died of natural causes and the FBI case is ongoing. Silently, I watched the cars come and go. I think I'm going to bed now, Shannon. Good night. Moments later, I heard the front door close. I went to bed, but I didn't sleep. It's not right, I said to Rusty, who was lying on my chest, squeezing the breath out of me. I keep telling myself people pass away every day. If I checked the obits, I'd see that. It was just some odd trick of fate that I stumbled across the information about these three all at the same time. I need to let it go. I can do that. It's just time for me to step back. Right brain agreed with left brain. I sighed with relief. Then I laid awake for hours. Chapter 18. The bank opened at 8. I was the first customer. I stood in front of Tori and repeated what I had said to Shannon. Hope died in Tori's eyes and sadness took up residence. She had come to me and I had promised to help. Now I was letting her down. Upstairs, I ate cereal leaning against the kitchenette counter. I made my bed, picked up my laundry, and turned around just in time to see Rusty, who was sitting on the windowsill facing the fountain, wave goodbye. All around him, the morning sun streamed in. Lifting his paw, he touched the window twice, then jumped into the chair and laid down. My heart swelled. I got all teary. If asked why, I wouldn't have had an answer. Hi, Clyde, I said into the phone after clearing out the emotion. Look, I fell down coming home from work last night. Huh? Yeah, some idiot jogger. I have to go for an x-ray and getting seen might take a while. My next call was to Shannon. How quick can you get here, I asked. I'm driving to Virgin's. I picked up Shannon as she came running out of Sunny's, toast in hand. I had a plan. Even with using I-89 all the way to the Shelburne exit, it took 54 minutes to get to Virgin's. We split up. You go to registration or whatever they call themselves. Find someone who was right there and saw Valita when she arrived. Who brought her in? What time of day? What were her symptoms? Got that? Absolutely. And find out if visitors have to sign in, I added. What are you going to do? Shannon asked. Find someone in housekeeping or nursing staff that worked with Valina daily. We were there about 25 minutes and met back at the car. As usual, Shannon was the one with written notes. Okay, she said. Valina was already in a wheelchair in the lobby when registration saw her. But the woman knew she'd come in a car and questioned the wisdom of that when she saw how weak Valina was. Reception said the attorney got agitated and didn't stay long. He said the entire process took longer than he expected and he had to be in court. The nurse's report describes Valina as exhausted, dehydrated, and malnourished. She got better but never recovered. Probably contacted pneumonia, but there was no one to contact to authorize a doctor's call. She had a DNR. Shannon stopped reading. I braked for a red light. What? I asked, turning to Shannon. When Valina passed away, the administrator at the nursing home tried to call Hogue several times, Shannon said. His cell phone rang until the recording came on, saying it wasn't set up to take messages. He signed in twice to visit her, but never stayed longer than 15 or 20 minutes. I noticed some kind of badge swinging from a lanyard around Shannon's neck. I was willing to bet that was how she got so much information. Did you tell them who you were? I asked. Department of Elder Care, Health and Welfare, she said. I rolled my eyes. Okay, I got to talk to both the housekeepers that work in that wing and 2 nurses before someone questioned me, I said. They all said the same thing. She wasn't happy, cried all the time, and didn't understand where she was. One of the housekeepers said a man came to see Valina, but the woman didn't know if he was the nephew or the lawyer. Valina was afraid of him. He bullied her until she signed some papers. He wanted an aide to sign as a witness, but the guy refused. When the visitor saw the housekeeper watching him, he chased her away. The housekeeper said by the time she got back with a nurse, the man could not be found. Valina was unable to remember the man or what had happened. Shannon was taking notes while I talked. Did you get any names, she asked. No, wait, the first woman was Kate. Okay, describe the ones you talked to, said Shannon. The ride home took forever. Shannon said that she'd try to find information on the sister whose last name was Hogue. After that, she'd check out every Brad Hogue from the Canadian border to Boston. I thought when she said that it was a stretch, but with Shannon you never know. She had gotten a description of Brad Hogue at the nursing home, as had I. Tall, white, glasses, funky new growth beard. I promised to call Tori. There was a chance the bank had gotten a shot of him on the security cameras. I skidded into work at 4:45, sent a frowning Carly home, and left Clyde in his office reading the paper while I assessed the front end of the store. This was the delivery day, and as near as I could tell, the muscle guys, Matt and Pete, had everything working like clockwork. Ivy was wandering around, periodically putting something away. Hi, Ivy, I said. Now that you've gotten some idea how the store is laid out, I'm going to get you up to speed on how things really work. There was fear in her eyes. I turned her over to Eric for cash register training. Matt was still on the clock, so I had him replace the near-empty pallets of soil and fertilizer out front of the building. I was on a roll and ready to take on Clyde about the cell phones when he called me into his office. I found this upstairs, he said, pointing to a wooden box on his desk. Will this work for your phone thing? The old box was some kind of antique soda bottle crate that had a dozen wooden compartments about 6 inches deep. It was dirty, chipped, and perfect. Wonderful, I beamed. Okay, I'm leaving, said Clyde. He already had an unlit cigar in his mouth and his hat on. No problem. I waved him unaware that he was already gone. Ted clocked in, Ivy went home, and I had Eric power wash the box on the loading dock. Is it dry enough to hang? I asked when he came back inside. Give it 15 minutes, he wiped his hands. You guys missed all the excitement. Both Ted and I looked up. The cops are back. Seems like some thrill seeker broke into the apartment next door where the old guy was killed. Cool, grinned Ted. I thought, no, I knew who had been there. Clipboard in hand, I wandered down the paint aisle, leaving the 2 guys behind the counter deciding the best way to hang the new cell phone storage box. When I was out of sight, I snuck out the loading dock door and crept toward the cruiser parked in the alley. Even though no one could see the car, the lights were strobing. An officer I didn't know was standing at the bottom of the wooden stairs. After introducing myself as the hardware store manager, I said I wanted to verify this activity wasn't dangerous for any of my customers. No, ma'am, he said. A private citizen called us and said the witness somehow sneaked in here the other day. The chief is just checking it out. You're fine. Thank you, I said. Just as I turned away, I saw the yellow Hummer parked on Church Street. I sent Shannon a text asking if the eyewitness report came with a description. Later, the hardware store landline rang. I was hoping for Shannon, but it was my oldest daughter. Mom, she said, Dad wants to take a month off and drive across country. Oh, I laughed. Good for him. My ex has some odd driving habits. No windows can be open. We listen to an informational podcast. No clutter, food, or drink in the car. And God forbid you talk. His mother won't even ride to church with him. No, Mom. He wants to make us go with him. KK sounded like she was choking. He wants us to get to know Marcy. He says she's the one. Now, this was going to be an issue. First of all, there was no way I was going to condone this still in the heated throes of new love couple to be out there 24/7 with my children. Then there's the fact that KK can't make it 2 blocks, and Shannon gets motion sickness looking at a parked car. I was sucking my teeth, damning myself again for putting us in this situation. I could have just stayed with him, put up with his baloney. I was totally ignoring the fact he had thrown me out. Mom, I'm thinking. There was nothing more to think about. You guys can stay with me. It'll be our vacation. Now, my apartment is big, but the girls' bedroom is a tight squeeze with a double bed and mix-and-match dressers that I had collected. I'll ask him, said KK. She broke the connection before I could tell her, no, that I would tell him. I called Teresa. Coffee, I asked. Anytime, she said. I raced up to her house during my supper break. She agreed I needed to do something. We had to develop a plan. Randall, Teresa's husband and a military police chief, wandered in and out of the kitchen while we were talking. Can I offer a suggestion, he said. Get out there now. Fill out applications for bigger places. Maybe on the ground or second floor. Create a record that you're trying. Trade the double for a set of bunk beds. That way they have their own space. It'll look better if you're inspected. I grabbed the paper. I'll help, said Teresa. She has a family and limited time, but Shannon, the roadrunner, had plenty. I went back to work and left the guys working out front. I called every place in the paper. Then Teresa sent a text suggesting a rental agent. Okay, bingo, it's all online. 1 application and you have a digital record. Tomorrow I'll call the furniture stores about bunk beds, I said. The price is going to make you faint, said Teresa. Have Shannon start calling secondhand stores. Leave your name and number. How far away do you think? I asked. 50, 60, 70 miles, said Teresa. Heck, we might as well go for 100. I said, maybe check out Craigslist. That's probably the best bet, and I could see pictures. It was a start, not what I wanted to be doing this week, but I had been kicking myself for a long time about the situation with my girls. It felt good to do something. I was optimistic that this would all work out as smooth as glass. After all, I was their mother. Ha, foolish woman. Once again, the novel is Beneath the Fountain. I'm DonnaRae Menard. Thank you for joining me, and you can leave comments on my website, DonnaRaeMenardBooks.com. See you next time. Have a great day.